What's good, everybody? D&B ENT.
I'm Dee.
Your boy Brandon. Hey man, today we're about to do a video by Cinefix. This one is titled Top 10 Most Controversial Movies of All Time. Controversial movies. Do you know any? Other than movies
The Christ movie
that's based on like civil rights. Of course, we all know that's controversial movies.
What's controversial about that?
Other than those.
It's truth. It's fact. What's controversial about the truth?
I know, I'm just saying.
That movie with Passion of the Christ, that was very controversial.
Why is that controversial?
People was mad that he was playing Jesus and stuff, and that he was doing a movie on Jesus. And a lot of bad stuff happened to him while he was making the movie. Did you hear about
Wait, why was people mad that he was playing Jesus?
I forgot.
Because he wasn't white?
Huh?
Because he wasn't white? The guy?
The guy was white. What are you talking about?
The guy was white?
Have you seen Passion of the Christ? He was white.
Man, I haven't seen that movie in years, man. I've seen that movie when it first came out, and I never want to watch it again. Because back when it first came out, that was when I was in my heavy Christian days, and I was like, how they doing this to Jesus? And it was just disgusting, so I never seen it again. But, yeah, whatever, I guess. Any other movies? Yeah, I can't think of that either. You ready to hop into it?
Okay.
Let's go.
You can never please everybody, but some films sure seem to piss them all off. So grab your torches and your pitchforks. These are the top 10 most controversial movies of all time.
You like some old movies. I don't know none of these. I don't like old movies that came out before 1990.
Before we get started, let's talk YouTube. Yes, there are a lot of controversial sexually abhorrent and exploitation films, and sure, some of them have real artistic merit. But you don't want to spend 10 minutes listening to us talk about movies about rape, and we certainly don't want to spend 10 minutes talking about movies about rape. So let's just get the whole lot out of our way really fast with our number 10 and move on to less rapey topics, alright?
Yes,
so,
thanks.
there's Necromantic and Human Centipede and The Irreversible and Caligula and I Spit on Your Grave and the original Last House on the Left, and also movies like The Last Tango in Paris, Antichrist, and a Serbian film, which are probably starting worthwhile conversations, even if they're not particularly easy to watch. But for our pick, we're giving it to Salo, or 120 Days of Sodom.
Deboli creature incatenate, destinate al nostro
They doing
piacere.
films that's not even
Spero non vi
English,
siate
huh?
illusi di trovare qui la ridicola libertà concessa dal mondo esterno.
There's abuse, murder, torture, humiliation, rape, and corprophagia, which you might want to turn on Safe Search for if you Google it, unless you liked Two Girls, One Cup. In a story about 4 fascist libertines who take 18 hostages to their Italian mansion for a massive forced orgy. Banned all over and both lauded and reviled by critics, Salo managed to rattle champions of decency worldwide. And while it's often obscene and even grotesque, there's an inexplicable artistic voice beneath it all, speaking to and about the power and perversion within us all. Of course, you don't always need torture porn to rile up the modest. Sometimes all it takes is a good old-fashioned blowjob. Movies like Kids, Short Bus, and Pretty Baby took unflinching looks at the fringes of sex and provoked the wrath of the censors in the process. But for our number 9, we're giving it to The Brown Bunny, a film that climaxes in an unsimulated on-screen blowjob that launched it into infamy and started a flame war between the director and superstar critic Roger Ebert. Ebert called it the worst film ever to play at Cannes, to which the director responded by calling him a fat pig with the physique of a slave trader. The insults culminated in the director wishing cancer upon Ebert, apologizing and recutting his film. Happily ever after, I guess. Now, back in ancient history, when movies cost a quarter and colors hadn't been invented yet, an on-screen blowjob would have ripped the fabric of Victorian-era space-time down the middle. Back then, the Hays Code would hardly let you hint at sexuality, much less whip it out and slurp it down for the world to see. As early as the 1890s, Fatima muscle dancer Fatima's Coochie Coochie Dance and Edison's The Kiss pissed off the world by bringing burlesque and smooching to the screen. And as late as the 40s and 50s, movies like The Outlaw, The Moon is Blue, and Baby Doll threatened family values with things like cleavage, words like virgin and pregnant, and scenes of seduction. But our number 8 goes to the most significant of them all, 1950's L'Amour. Mussolini's half of the film, The Miracle, awoke the wrath of the National Legion of Decency, who called it anti-Catholic and sacrilegious for showing a man impregnating a delusional peasant who thought she was the Virgin Mary. It got pulled by censors, started a lawsuit, wound up in the Supreme Court, and in a landmark decision, the court declared the film protected by the First Amendment as artistic expression, setting the precedent for the complete dismantling of all censorship of American film. And if you want to know more about that, click here to check out our complete history of Hollywood censorship on Film Schooled. Next up for our number 7, we're looking at Death and Gore. The original Texas Chainsaw Massacre was the first splatter film bloodfest to hit the screen, and it certainly made lots of upstanding citizens.
Isn't there another one
but
about
no
to
one
come out?
actually believed it was real. Snuff and Faces of Death were 2 films that hoped to capitalize on the morbid thrill of watching people actually die. And while Snuff just faked its death, Faces cut in genuine newsreel stock of the real thing. But for our pick, it's gotta go to Cannibal Holocaust.
That sounds ridiculous.
You did it, goddammit. You just invited us to dinner.
Seized by the courts after 10 days of release, the director was arrested and charged with crimes of obscenity and murder because people actually believed he'd killed his actors and impaled one of them on a spike. He didn't, but he did kill and dismember a couple animals along the way, which kinda sucks on its own. It's not a pretty film or a heartwarming film or even a very nice film, but it's an extremely controversial film, which is why it makes our list.
They thought he really
Why would
killed
they
him.
think he really
Let's
killed
first
people?
They
wash
wasn't
the
used
gore
to
out of our
seeing
brains
that.
with some
That
eye
thing is
bleach.
ugly. That's a sloth.
And continue forward with the far more palatable number 6, because if you've ever been on social media, you know there's nothing that riles people up more than politics. JFK was controversial for entertaining conspiracy theories about an assassination, while Death of a President was met with distaste for enacting a not quite fictional enough one. All Quiet on the Western Front drew World War I era criticism for casting German characters in a favorable light, while Triumph of the Will is still controversial for, well, pretty much the same thing. But for our number 6, it's gotta go to the film that drew comparison to Riefenstahl's Nazi Bonanza, Michael Moore's strategically timed Fahrenheit 9/11.
You can make people do anything if they're afraid.
There have been endless disputes as to
seen
the
this?
factual
No, but I heard
accuracy
about
of
it.
Moore's documentary.
What's wrong
It
with
was
it?
beat to death by talking heads and radio talk jockeys on both sides of the spectrum. Even Ray Bradbury got all pissy about its name. But Michael Moore certainly kicked a hornet's nest, so it's gladly on our list. At number 5, we want to turn our eye towards some of the outrages that have occurred over the representation of homosexuality on film. In 1961, Victim told a story of gay lovers, much to the dismay of censorship boards and viewers alike, earning it bans all across the world for, quote, portraying homosexuality in too positive a light, close quote. Midnight Cowboy earned itself an X rating for some
That
rather
was
tame
weird.
simulated sex scenes that just so happened to be between 2 men. And Brokeback Mountain certainly pissed off some Catholics and conservatives by ruining the epitome of the American
Remember we just watched this?
Yeah, it was a
gay.
good movie.
But our
It
pick
was a
for
good
number
movie.
5 actually goes to a movie that pissed off the homosexual community itself
With that dancing part.
Cruising.
Tonight, why don't we take a walk?
Criticized for equating homosexuality with homicide, Cruising turned its lens on the seediest side of LBGTQ. Gay activists were livid, concerned that the film might further damage the community's image and inspire crimes against homosexuals. And they didn't wait for the premiere to speak their mind. Protests began mid-shoot. Unfortunately, they were right to be concerned. 2 months
Why?
after the film's release, 2 gay men were slain outside a gay bar used in the film in a mass shooting, which really sucks. Moving on to number 4, we know that race has never been a controversial issue in America, so we can just skip it,
never.
right? Well, except for movies like D.W. Griffith's KKK Fest Birth of a Nation, Disney's marvelously
I heard about
racist Song of the South, or Michael Cimino's singularly monochromatic depiction of the North Vietnamese, and also for movies like the interracially lip-locked Island in the Sun and Spike Lee's much too outspoken Do the Right Thing. People have been getting offended from all angles for years. But the one film that probably rustled the most jimmies was a 1971 independent drama called Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song. So controversial that only 2 theaters would originally show it, it ended up spawning an entire genre. A film dedicated to all the brothers and sisters who had had enough of the man, it earned itself an X rating as it bragged from an all-white jury. It became mandatory viewing by the Black Panthers, yet it was decried by Ebony magazine. No one can agree on anything about the film, which pretty much clinches it for our list.
Damn, okay.
Of course, not all controversies are about arguing over whether a fictional fairy tale moving picture piece of entertainment is naughty or nice. Some of them took issue with the actual reality behind the film. Heaven's Gate's animal abuse contributed to its massive flop. Freaks casting offended viewers for being either hard to look at or exploitive, or both. And Titty Cut Follies was criticized for how shamelessly it disregarded the privacy of its subjects on screen. But
Titty
our
Cut
number 3
Follies,
pick goes
what?
to the Twilight Zone movie, which began a 10-year-long legal battle and complete overhaul of the movie industry's safety standards after a tragic helicopter accident killed 3 actors.
Ooh.
Of course, it's not just video games that are ruining our youth. Violent movies have been systematically dismantling the upstanding moral fabric of our society since the original Scarface. So, is it any wonder that our number 2 tracks the outrage created by films like Bonnie and Clyde, Psycho, and The Wild Bunch for exposing cinemagoers to more vivid depictions of death and brutality than ever seen before? Or The Warriors and Clockwork Orange for inciting and glorifying crime and gang activity? Of course, if we're talking about controversial violence glorification, there's nothing quite like our number 2, Natural Born Killers.
It's a really popular movie.
I think I've seen this.
I've seen little pieces of it.
Yes, some people tried to blame the Columbine shooting on this movie, along with Doom, Marilyn Manson, and dark-colored trench coats, but this satire of how serial killers are viewed by the media somehow led people to believe that serial killers were being glorified by this movie, a part of the media. Go figure. We've talked politics, race, and sexual orientation. It's practically been a tour of things you probably shouldn't talk about on your first date. Hell, we even threw gore porn in there, which you probably shouldn't bring up over coffee and pleasantries either. But hey, it's your sex life. So, what else is there for our number 1? Why, it's the biggest first date fuck up of them all, religion. And oh boy, is there a long list of options for this one. There's been religious outrage over the Da Vinci Code, Dogma, Rosemary's Baby, The Exorcist, The Life of Brian, The Message, Hail Mary, and even the South Park movie. But the controversy gets really big when it comes to Jesus. Don't nobody fuck with Jesus. The Passion of the Christ was criticized and protested for excess violence, for deviation from scripture, for anti-Semitism, even for fabricating Pope quotes. But our number 1 pick actually goes to The Last Temptation of Christ.
Baptize me.
A beautiful Scorsese movie that took a few too many liberties with the story of Jesus and caused possibly the biggest stir of all. Countries banned it, theaters refused to show it, Christian groups boycotted and protested it, and evangelists tried to buy it and burn it, but it gets way crazier than that. A man drove a bus into a theater that was playing it. Extremists set off stink bombs, tear gas, graffitied theaters, and assaulted moviegoers. Worst of all, they launched a Molotov cocktail attack on a theater full of moviegoers, burning 13 audience members. It was a crazy response for a relatively beautiful and positive film, which is why we think it's the most controversial movie of all time.
Why are people so crazy?
They burned people and you supposed to be religious?
I was just about to say that makes no sense. So if these people that were upset were Christians and religious, how you gonna attack people and kill people? That it makes no sense. Makes zero sense, my friend.
That is insane. These movies are definitely controversial. I haven't seen any of them. Well, none of the main movies.
You saw Passion of the Christ?
Well, that wasn't on here, the list.
Yeah, that's true.
So, but yeah, this was an interesting list. Let us know what y'all thought about it. If you've seen any of these movies, let us know what you thought about them.
Yeah, man.
Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and see you in the next one. Bye.